to Diana Live. Now, this is an interesting twist because normally I'm only on nights and weekends, but today we have two very special guests. Joining me is Gemma O'Doherty, and I can't say enough good things about her. I wrote down, here's what I wrote, and then I'll tell you what I really want to say. So, Gemma is an investigative journalist in Ireland known for exposing corruption in the Irish legal system. She is also, now these are my free associative words. She is the biggest badass in Ireland, and I'm a great admirer of the work that you do, Gemma. And we have a lot in common.
Well, we've so much, Diana. I've learned so much from you. I think you're probably the biggest badass in Massachusetts.
Yes, I am. I would say I stand with that title. Thank you very much.
And I stand with it here. I'm proud to be, because look, I think we've followed a fairly similar trajectory, in terms of thinking the truth movement was where it was at, and Trump and all of that. And then we've realized, oh no, boy, they're deceiving us as well. So I've learned so much from you and the rest of the hoax busters.
No, I appreciate it. I just got not playing live. It is playing. It's playing now. Miss Diane King just texted me.
And said it's not live.
It is live. I'm looking at it. We are live.
Oh, good.
We are live. Okay, so we are waiting because our guest, Mr. Tony Brady, is having some technical difficulties, and I can tell you he looks very, very nice. He's got this nice shirt on, a tie, and you are going to be stunned by what he has to say. So, Gemma, what I want you to do is just give like an overview of what we're going to talk about, specifically Mr. Brady's son, Aaron Brady, who is now serving 40 years in prison for a crime that both you, Mr. Brady, and others say that he did not commit. So if you can give us a synopsis of the case and how it relates to Boston and New York, because that is a very interesting twist in the story. So, Gemma.
Okay, well, I'll give you the basics of it. And I will say the reason we reached out to you, Diana, is because we feel that Aaron Brady can only be released if the people in America, in New York and Boston in particular, who told very serious lies about Aaron, and other people who know these people who are lying, until they come clean, this case can only be exposed in America. The reason for that is because our police force here, who framed Aaron with the Department of Homeland Security in America, some highly corrupt officers over there, our police force sadly is rotten to the core, and our courts are rotten to the core. Aaron's appeal is coming up in October, but I have to say I'm not hopeful at all. We really have a big problem with judicial corruption. So this story begins 10 years ago when an armed robbery...
For a second, sorry. Looks like Mr. Brady is here. Let me just add him to the stream.
Yeah. Great.
Mr. Brady, can you hear us?
Yes, ladies, I can. My apologies. Some technical issues here. So thank you, Diane.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I just want to ask you, what time is it over there across the pond?
Just gone 6 p.m.
We're just at 9 minutes past 6. Yeah, 6 p.m.
Okay. So Gemma was just about to give the synopsis of the case, Mr. Brady. And so, Gemma, I don't know if why don't you continue, Gemma, and then
I'll just give the bones of it. Okay, so I was saying that exactly 10 years ago in January in 2013, on January the 25th, there was an armed robbery at what we call a credit union. I think you have them over there. They're very small local banks. And there was several people involved in this. Now, there were police. It was it happened at a time when the credit union had shut for the evening. The staff were bringing the funds for the day to another bank in a more central location. It happened in a town called Dundalk, which is just south of the border with Northern Ireland, which is the United Kingdom. Well, the British believe it is, we believe it's Ireland, but that's another day's work. So Aaron and Tony and the family live just over the border in Northern Ireland, which is another jurisdiction. And at the time of this armed robbery, Aaron was on the other side of the border in UK territory. He was actually involved in the practice of diesel laundering, which is something that a lot of young men do on the border to make extra cash. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but it is a criminal offense. But
what is it specifically? Gemma, sorry. What is it specifically? Because I've never heard of it, so I don't know what we have that's similar here in the States. What is it? Diesel laundering.
It's basically, yeah. Do you want to Tony explain briefly? Tony, are you there? Can you hear me? Okay. It's a manner of cleaning diesel.
Yes, I'm back again. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tony, do you want to explain what the diesel laundering is? Just very briefly.
There's diesel laundering. Very briefly, there's two types of diesel. Obviously, all vehicles that use the roads, private cars, lorries, that type of. At that stage, back in the day, and to this day, there was agricultural diesel, and there was a massive difference in the price range because of government taxes. The government taxes was much lower on the agricultural diesel, and to avoid and to stop people from using the agricultural diesel on their everyday road vehicles, was a dye put into the vehicle, either green or red. And stopped by the authorities in your private car, and they checked your fuel, and you had the illegal fuel in, you would be fined and you may very well lose your vehicle. Wow. So what was happening was these young men were buying the cheap, the untaxed fuel, putting it through a number of different processes and taking the dye out of it, allowing it to be sold as road diesel. So it could be.
So the process, I think you have the gist of it.
Yes.
I don't know, the sound isn't great there now, Tony. Can you hear Tony okay, Diana?
I can hear, but he breaks up a little bit, Tony. So I don't know if you're.
I can hear you guys are breaking up just a little.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, okay, so look.
Or if you're on a hotline.
Just want to maybe. Yes.
Okay. So
yeah, I don't know. The connection is well, I'll just continue the story because it's important that we get the main elements out first. So, as Tony was saying, that it's a process whereby farmers don't have to pay this extra tax, which we all have to pay as motorists. So they put a dye into the diesel, and we all have to use the diesel that has the dye in it. And I think that's it, or the other way around. Anyway, so it's a means of allowing farmers not to have to pay all this extra tax. Okay, so it's very common practice in Northern Ireland on the border. Anywhere there's a border, there's all sorts of, minor and major criminal activities going on. And Ireland is no different because it has this big border in the middle of it up in the north. And so, as we say, some people, I believe taxation is theft. So
it is.
I don't see that. It is, considering we're funding corruption. Our taxes are going to fund corruption. So I've no problem with anyone laundering diesel at this stage. But anyway, that's what Aaron was doing. It is a criminal offence, and it can come with quite a hefty sentence. So we go back to the actual robbery, which was happening at the time that Aaron was involved in this practice, about half an hour away on the other side of the border. So we're back down in Ireland, in the Republic now. And so this collection of cash is happening at this small rural credit union. There's 2 armed police officers in the escort with the staff who are going to bring the cash to another bank, another secure location, and lodge it there for the night. And so the two police are there. Now, the raiders knew that there was going to be armed police at this credit union. And for some reason, they actually, when the cash was being transported, put into the cars, they landed on the site of the credit union. The police say there were 6. We don't know exactly if that's true or not, but they have never been able to produce this gang of 6 people or 5. And one of the police officers who was not
5.
driving, 5.
It was definitely
One
5.
of the police officers got out of the car. The person who was the passenger, his name was Adrian Donahue, and he was shot and murdered. For some reason, the raiders took off and left the bulk of the cash.
Right.
And then there's a long, convoluted story about a car that was burnt out. But we need to just go back to Aaron, okay, and what happened with Aaron. So unfortunately, that police officer, Adrian Donahue, lost his life 10 years ago. I believe that he may have the reason. I believe that this is an inside job. I believe that Aaron has been framed because the authorities know exactly who was responsible, that there was a reason why Adrian Donahue had to be killed. And I believe that he was investigating corruption within our police and possibly drug dealing and drug smuggling, which our police force are involved in. And there's plenty of evidence to prove that they are importing drugs into this country to destroy the minds of the young people. Our country, sadly, is awash with drugs, like Boston, New York.
No different than our country.
No,
let me just break
Yeah.
in right here. So I just want to give a recap to everybody who might just join us. So today we're joined by investigative journalist Gemma O'Doherty, who has written extensively on this story, and Mr. Tony Brady, who is the father of Aaron Brady, who got arrested, tried, and convicted to 40 years in prison for a crime that both of you and others say that he did not commit. Now, this story goes from Ireland to Boston to New York, right back to Ireland. And the Brady family, and I applaud you. I don't know how you're doing it, Mr. Brady, but so the Brady family is really on a crusade to get to prove Aaron's innocence and to get him out of prison. And I just want to remind people, you can go to www.justice4aaronbrady.com. And again, www.justice4aaronbrady.com. And you can see the stories. You can also, there are video stories there where Mr. Brady does a great job of explaining the details of the crime. So I just want to go right to Mr. Brady and ask you, it's probably a stupid question. Why did you go on this crusade? Because this is obviously consuming your life. Why did you go on this crusade?
Well, there was obviously no other option. We probably were very passive and naive at the time of our arrest and over the course of his trial. And we sat quietly and we respected the jurisdiction we were in. We respected the justice system, and we had maybe a small modicum of respect for some of the Garda, the police who were investigating murder of their colleague and their friend. But as the trial unfolded, and in August 2020, when Aaron was found guilty in front of his peers, a jury, and he was sentenced then in October 2020, we knew during the course of the trial what we were watching was a fiasco, was a theatre. There are multiple examples, but we were sitting watching people give evidence who had, we'd say, for example, a farmer seen a vehicle at 10:30, and he came and he said he seen a vehicle he thought was a certain shape or size or whatever, which actually didn't match any of Aaron's cars or Aaron's friends' cars. But as it transpired, as we were watching this in the court, he seen a vehicle at 10:30 p.m. that was actually on fire at 10 p.m. Now, I know it's very difficult to get your head around that, but this is the type of evidence that was brought to create a narrative and to create a story. We were of the opinion that that man and many others would be brought back to the court, but we didn't understand the cross-examination should have taken place at that time. We had serious with our initial solicitor and
Yeah, you're breaking up, Mr.
all of a
Mr.
sudden
Brady. You're
court
breaking up.
is over. Aaron can be found guilty.
Yeah, so we are having
I think
audio.
yeah, we're having audio. I'd say maybe mute him for
Gemma,
the moment.
can you take that for a second? And I'm just mute me for a second, and I'm going to try and get a lead to connect directly to the Wi-Fi, please.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think your audience can fully understand the implications of the American angle. I want to explain that.
Well, Gemma, before you do, I just want to hop in and say, for people who are going to watch this, and I know the audio is difficult, and I'm hoping that we can get Mr. Brady on another time, also to keep following this story, because just in my, I have not put the time that Mr. Brady has put in. I had so many questions regarding evidence that, a light bulb went off in my head. And I can only imagine, because I had a similar experience, and I bet you did too, Gemma, when you believe that the justice system actually works. And when you're sitting there saying there's no way that this could go in a bad direction because the justice system works. But then the shock. So I understand, Mr. Brady saying he was passive because you believed in the system. And then when you find out that the system is not what we were led to think it is shocking, and it's a tragedy. So there are so many discrepancies. So now let's go to the night of the robbery. Okay. I have a little video that I watched, and it's a short video, and it's on the Justice, the number 4 Aaron Brady on YouTube. So it's almost 3 minutes. So let's watch this video, and then I'm curious what people have to say just watching this video about the night that this happened. So let me just get that on here. I do not have a producer. It's me. Okay, here we go.
It was now 9:28 p.m. The credit union CCTV shown in court captured a horror that then unfolded over the next 58 seconds. As Pat and Bernadette got into their separate vehicles, the Qashqai and unmarked Garda Avences moved towards the exit of the car park, awaiting Pat's gold Mazda to join the convoy. Suddenly, a Volkswagen Passat pulled up on the road outside, blocking the exit. Almost simultaneously, 4 men sprang from over the back wall of the car park.
In a case where Aaron has been convicted of...
So I just want you to see that, Gemma. So they're showing that, in my opinion, this was very sophisticated planning from somebody. This is not like your run-of-the-mill criminal. So somebody blocked the driveway so they couldn't get out, and then 4 men came out of the bushes. Is that correct?
Pretty much. Very sophisticated planning. And some very other unusual things happened in that Adrian Donahue was not due to work that evening.
Exactly.
This is the police officer, who was killed. And he was called in at the last minute. Now, I do believe that he was putting his nose into places that he shouldn't. And he comes from a family of police officers as well. And I hate to say it, but they are all well aware that Aaron Brady is completely innocent. His wife is a police officer, and he has 2 brothers. And I would make an appeal to them once again, because they are aware that I've been exposing this case. They've tried to intimidate. Well, his wife has attempted she has attempted to intimidate me through publication of a story that we wrote. I was told that she was going to go to the police about the fact that we were telling the truth. and that the alleged killer of her husband is an innocent man. So you would think that she would want justice. But let me tell you where America comes into it. For your listeners, many of whom will have some Irish connection, we're talking about two counties, one called County Louth, which is where the murder happened, which is just north of Dublin, and then over the border, which is where Aaron was, in County Armagh. So they're the two counties. So Aaron was at the time of the murder in County Armagh. After doing his diesel laundering, he went to his then girlfriend's house, and this was at about 10:30 p.m. and he was there for several hours. Now, I've spoken to that family and I asked them, did this man have the demeanor of somebody who had just killed a police officer? And the girlfriend's mother, who I spoke to, was absolutely adamant that he was completely normal. They were chatting away. He was in great form. Now, this is somebody who is supposed to be on the run, having just murdered a police officer. This is within an hour or so of the murder actually happening. But even more extraordinary is the idea that after, and this happened after he was finished there with his girlfriend in his girlfriend's house, he actually was staying down with a friend back over in the south, down in the south in County Louth, very near actually where the credit union was. So he drove back down across the border into the nest of police officers who had set up checkpoints everywhere at this stage. And they spent the night there in a friend's house. The next morning, police checkpoints everywhere. Aaron was stopped at a checkpoint as he was making his way, I think, back home. He actually may have been heading down to another county in the south, actually. And he was stopped and asked, where were you last night? Because he was diesel laundering, he told a lie about the fact that he said he was in his girlfriend's house at the time of the murder, about the 9:30, okay? And so he told a lie at this checkpoint because he was worried that he was in a bit of trouble with the law, bit of joyriding and a few other minor pieces, nothing where he had hurt another person, no serious crime. And at the time he was relative, I think he was 23, around 22, 23 at the time. So he then made this, said that where he was, a little bit later. So the timing was out. And the police then in Northern Ireland started to put a focus on his girlfriend. And there was a little bit of pressure coming on in relation to the time. So Aaron then went with his lawyer to make a statement to the Gardaí, to the police in Ireland, to say, look, this is where I was. I was involved in diesel laundering. I was committing an offence, but I did not carry out the murder. You can go and check the yard where I was. There'll be plenty of, there'll be evidence there to prove it. I can prove that I was there, etc. It was a wet, windy January night, darkest winter. But so he thought that would be the end of it, Diana. He had come clean. But oh boy, it was only the beginning. And they started to harass him, plague him, follow him. They started defaming him around the community and his family. Tony is a very respected physiotherapist in County Armagh. They're very well known, very respected people, decent family. And the police started this campaign of malicious defamation and harassment upon Aaron, to the point where he said, I have to leave. And that's when he took a flight to, I think he started in Boston, to begin a new life. Now, as you know, there's no shortage of illegal Irish young people in Boston and New York. It breaks my heart that they're there. I would like them all back here so we can straighten them out, and so that they're not taking jobs from Americans, etc. But that is sadly what happens. We lose a lot of our young people to America. And we're very grateful to America that they take them in, and many begin a new life. They do work hard generally. So
let me just ask you, did he have family, or why did he choose Boston? I mean, I know there's a big community here, but why Boston? Did he have friends?
Tony, if you're there, he didn't have family as far as I know, but there are lots of Northern Ireland connections. There's quite a few Northern Ireland businesses over there, Northern Irish businessmen who seem to have done well over the decades. They would be well established. And so he knew that work was available. And so he got a good job. He settled down, was doing very, very well, got married and had a baby. And during this period, there was, you know, while he was socializing and that, he was sort of getting in with Irish American circles, and particularly in New York. And he moved down to New York, where he was living in the Bronx, I think, Yonkers.
I think it was
yeah. Is Tony there?
Tony.
Can I try that? How is that now?
This sounds
very
good.
Better?
Very good.
Yes, I connected via an Ethernet cable, so it's not Wi-Fi.
Perfect.
So
I'm just explaining, Tony, the
yes,
his early days in New York, and you know how he got to know the two witnesses who told lies about him and said that he had shot.
Yes, he initially went to Boston to his friend in Boston, and he moved down to New York. He became involved with the GAA at the Gaelic grounds. He was working. He had a very good job. He had a nice apartment on 28 First Street, just off McLean. Met a lovely girl from Kerry, and had a little boy, and they were married, and the baby was born in October 2017, and Aaron was arrested as he left for work in May 2018, and that was the beginning of the nightmare, so to speak. I suppose when we look at the American aspect of the case, we are aware that Detective Inspector Mohan, I think it was, travelled to America as early as December 2013, 11 months after the Modern robbery, and they were making inquiries about Aaron Brady. So the point is, I suppose, from the very outset, Diana, is that Aaron Brady should have been deported immediately. He was an ESTA overstay, and this is the point that we're trying to show and highlight, that in that period of time between the end of 2013 and particularly moving into 2014 until his arrest in 2018, there was a concerted effort to create a narrative, a false narrative, and to get people who had criminal issues, immigration issues, to tell lies that Aaron Brady said, the cop, I shot the guard. And the reason that they needed that to happen was because there is absolutely no physical evidence here on the island and in the car park and in the area around Dundalk where the murder and robbery took place. And that evidence in itself, as you've shown there, Diana, is itself curated, manufactured, and what we believe what happened, the detectives at the Gardaí here in Ireland went down a rabbit hole in January 2013, and Senior Investigating Officer Mr. Pat Murray, Sergeant John Maroney were certain, and Pat Murray, Senior Investigating Officer, Pat Murray said this on the oath in stand during the course of Aaron's trial. He just simply stood up. He said, I knew Aaron Brady was in the car park at Ulster Credit Union. And that goes back a little to what Gemma told earlier in relation to the yard where Aaron actually was loading the diesel, the illegal fuel laundering. The authorities never searched the yard. They never went to the place where the suspect said he was. So it gives some idea as to the mindset and the mentality of those who are running the investigation from the early onset. And I believe sometime around August, September in 2013, the Gardaí in Dundalk Garda station realised that they had missed their opportunity. The gang who actually committed the murder had obviously absconded and no trace behind. And left with a situation followed only someone who had told a lie the morning after the murder and robbery. And
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Mr. Brady. And I guess I'll just make a statement. There is zero physical evidence, no fingerprints, no weapon. Aaron doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the training, right? I mean, in my opinion, from watching the videos and that factual evidence little video, that looks like a hit to me. That's what that looks like. It looks, in my opinion, answer this question.
Yes.
When Adrian Donahue got out of his vehicle to approach the car, right? He to approach the car that went across the driveway. Is that what happened? He got out of his vehicle to approach that car. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
He got out of his vehicle to approach the vehicle that had blocked the entrance. Yes.
And he did not pull his weapon.
I suppose if I can explain it like this, it might be easier. As if you're mad, no. His weapon was still secured and holstered when he lost his life.
Right. So here he is on a we call them details or however you want to call for police here. So here he is guarding money and
Yes.
the transport of money from one bank to another, right? Credit union. And he gets out of his vehicle
Yes.
to approach another vehicle that clearly blocked the driveway so they could not move forward. And yet he didn't pull his weapon. In my opinion, this is just my opinion as a layperson, I believe he knew the person who pulled across the vehicle, pulled across the driveway. Because why wouldn't he have pulled his weapon? Right? Think about it. Why would he get out of his vehicle?
Yes, well, I suppose
Do you see what I'm saying? Has that occurred to you that maybe he knew
Yeah.
those people?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree with
we
Tony
all
that
and
this is a
every
random
possibility has gone through.
I don't-
Has gone. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why we're still.
I would lean, but I know a lot of people have come to us. Numerous people have come to us with different theories and possibilities. It may, if it was possibly a direct assassination or whatever. I believe, and I think we believe as a family, that it is a botched robbery. That's my. The only way we will ever know is when the people who actually committed this horrific crime are brought to justice. As Detective Guard Adrian Donahue stood out of the car, he was looking sort of directly in front of him, and the raiders approached from his right, and the shot was fired within 1 or 2 seconds of the raiders jumping into the car park. Was it an assassination? We really don't know, and I don't believe it will ever be known. As I say, and Gemma has spoken to a number of people who would be of the opinion that it was some form of a setup, shall we say. Our opinion is that it's more of a botched robbery and probably not an intentional murder, but either or, we'll never know until those people that actually done it are brought to justice. And as you say, Diana, a lot of little things like that, either the driver not throwing his weapon or the passenger, who was Detective Guard Adrian Donahue, the weapon wasn't thrown when the car park entrance was blocked. They may have just thought it was someone stopping to make a phone call, just pulling in to see if the credit union was still open, someone coming late to make a lodgement, to make a withdrawal, or to use the credit union. There's all those possibilities, and they're numerous, and we have no way at this moment in time of factually proving or disproving any of those theories. One thing we do know...
If
Gemma wanted
just,
to jump in.
sorry, Tony.
Go ahead.
Tony, if you don't mind, you see, the reason I believe this is there's so many reasons why I believe that this was an inside job, because they know Aaron is innocent. Like, there's not a shred of evidence to place Aaron in that. So why would they have invested millions, I would say, at this stage in the framing of Aaron Brady, millions of taxpayers' money, because this has involved an awful lot of trips back and forward to the States, in cahoots with Homeland Security. They have rewarded the key witness who lied about Aaron, an absolute criminal, a guy who left here, Dublin. His name is Daniel Cahill, after being stabbed, who was involved with criminal gangs here, the absolute dregs of the earth. If I'm sorry to use that expression about any human being, but somebody, a ne'er-do-well, as we would say. And he was illegal in America. He should have been deported immediately. He was caught with steroids. He was involved in an attack with a machete, whereby he assaulted another young man. And he's the last person you would use as a witness, because he clearly isn't reliable. And his only claim against Aaron is that he said that Aaron told him he shot a cop. Now, bear in mind, Diana, that Aaron had left his family behind. He left his home, his country, his friends, his life. He did not really want to go to America. And so they're trying to say that he went over to the States, built his new life, and then started blabbing out, I shot a cop, to a criminal. So the reason I do believe that they framed Aaron is because they are covering up something much more serious. Why invest all of this money? It wasn't a botched robbery under any circumstances. There's a police logistics employee who was involved in the framing of Aaron Brady. He gave evidence which was cock and bull, rubbish, lies during the court, which took place during COVID. It was one of the very few criminal trials in the world that took place, if not the only one. These people who gave evidence against Aaron, the one I've just mentioned, Daniel Cahill, and another Irish American called Molly Staunton, and that story in itself is horrific. But this particular logistics expert, recently, he owns an airport, a small airport in Ireland, which was recently found, thanks to international police, not Irish police, to be importing large quantities of cocaine. This same individual was involved in the framing of Aaron Brady, and he works for the police. He's not a police officer, but he's been involved in police logistics, and he gives evidence at trials. Now, so that's why I say there's definitely no way that this was a botched robbery, because they've had 10 years, to fight. Like, they know Aaron is innocent, so they should release Aaron immediately and say, okay, we have no evidence against this man. Now, Daniel Cahill in New York has ended up leaving. He went over there. He now owns a fancy cocktail bar in White Plains in New York.
Right. How does that
happen? How did that happen? This was an illegal. He was an illegal. Now, I just very briefly, before I let Tony back in to finish, the other witness is a woman called Molly Staunton, and she also is based in New York. She's second generation Irish, so she was born in America. During her testimony from her kitchen, right, these two who told terrible lies about Aaron were able to give their evidence by video link to send a man, their testimony, to send a man down for life for the murder of a police officer, one of the most serious crimes. And they were allowed to give their testimony by video link. This particular woman, she's, I would say, seriously mentally disturbed. During her testimony, a man came into the room and said, "Tell them what you effing have to say. Tell them," I'm going to use the word, I don't like to use it, but I'm going to use it. "Tell them what you fucking have to say." And then he slammed down her computer. Now, in a normal trial, the judge would have looked at the jury and said, "This witness is not reliable, dismiss her evidence." In fact, if it was a fair trial, he would have looked at the prosecution, the DPP, as we say, the prosecution lawyers, and said, "This case is dismissed. This client, this defendant is acquitted." Because this woman with the other guy, they were the main witnesses. They were clearly lying. So that's what we're dealing with here. This is why I've backed this family, because this man is innocent. He's a young father, and he should be released from jail immediately.
Right. So, Mr. Brady, I think you're in a rock, between a rock and a hard place. You're between Diana and Gemma. So, and and we are two tough cookies. And to me, you seem like a very nice man. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you do not want to disparage the memory of Adrian Donahue. To me, that's the way I take it.
Most certainly not. It was obviously a very, very heinous crime. It's terrible the way he lost his life in the line of duty. And it's something we've tried to do. I think we've created over 200 videos now in the Justice4aaronbrady campaign. And I hope, and I do believe, and I'm certain, we've also always been very respectful of Adrian Donahue, his family, friends. I can't really say I'm that respectful of his colleagues, because we have a situation, Diana, where the men who were his colleagues and of course his friends in the police force in Ireland know for a fact that the man in prison now, Aaron Brady, for the murder of their friend and colleague, is not and cannot be the man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donahue. And if we link that back to what you actually mentioned very short time ago about factual evidence, the factual evidence is, and without a shadow of a doubt, there's no contradictions here whatsoever. The man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donahue had a shotgun, a long barrel gun, and he was 6'1" or 6'2", as described by the second Garda who was driving the vehicle, and he was looking directly at the radar. And the Garda sitting looking at the radar had perspective because there was a second radar beside him. They were beside each other. And so he had one man at 6'1" or 2", another man at 5'7". So therefore, we have to assume that his heights were correct because Aaron Brady is only 5'7". So if Aaron Brady had the long barreled gun, the difference in the height of the two raiders would mean that the second raider was a dwarf. He would be actually smaller than the apex of the open door to the Garda car. The CCTV footage, although grainy and of poor quality, shows very clearly that the raider with the shotgun, the long barrel gun, is head and shoulders above the second raider, which confirms what Garda Ryan said. The credit union worker whose car was blocked at the entrance, see the man with the long barreled, she didn't actually say gun, she said a long bar running alongside his leg as he exited the car park, was long, lanky and athletic. Now, since he was born, Aaron Brady was never 6'1" or 2". He's never been any taller than 5'7". So Aaron Brady cannot be the man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donahue. And this is the mistake Senior Investigating Officer Pat Murray and Senior Investigating Officer Mark Phillips and Detective Paul Gill, this is the mistake they made with the criminals they were dealing with in America, in New York and Boston. They got them to tell lies to say that Aaron Brady said he was the man who shot the cop, which is physically impossible, because they didn't, I suppose they didn't expect us to generate the campaign, and they thought they were going to waltz through this storyline through the courts. So if that gives you some perspective as to why Aaron can't be, why he would never have said it anyway, and why it would be foolish for him to say it, because it's impossible for him to have been the man who pulled the trigger.
And
So
Mr. Brady,
all those.
I thought, I watched a lot of the videos, I read articles, and I had so many questions. So let me ask you, would it be difficult for you? See, I don't think people make mistakes in law enforcement. I don't. Now, in 2019, I was a back the blue person all the way until I experienced myself watching people get beat up by BLM and watching people get set up by the police and the police turning a blind eye. And it was a horrific way for me to be brought into reality. So is it difficult for you, Mr. Brady, to say they're not making mistakes? They're actually doing this on purpose. Is that difficult for you? Because what if they are doing this on purpose? What if there's an intentionality to what the police are doing in order to frame your son, Aaron Brady?
Without any doubt, it's intentional for the previous reasons I just explained. Aaron can't be the man. It is difficult to understand it. There would always have been, Diana, I suppose, and again, referring back to something Gemma mentioned in her introduction, when you live along the border, there's always, shall we say, activities. I think in every border in the world, and therefore, and there is some sort of perspective or a belief from people in other parts of this island that we are of a different nature here along the border, and we're sometimes looked down on, and that suits the narrative very well for the mainstream media and for police forces, because when Aaron's name was mentioned initially, this crime happened initially, South Armagh is mentioned right away. I presume it'll be something similar along the Mexico border. They would just mention a small town across the border in Mexico, that these people came from there, and everyone would accept that as truth. They're all bad people. These are all, we're all criminals. We're all bold, naughty people, and we have no respect for the law. So that gives, that they have a head start already. Once they mention South Armagh, the majority of people on this island, unfortunately, will take that to mean that these people must be bad people.
Right.
If that makes sense. So
no, it does. Unfortunately, it does. But what about Aaron's attorney? What do you call them? What do you call them in Ireland? Are they called lawyers?
Barrister, yes.
Solicitor really is.
Aaron, solicitor is your first point of contact. And we did have a firm of solicitors, a local firm here, just from Armagh. And we were initially quite happy with them. And we had ourselves as a family had gathered a lot of information and details that you've watched, Diana, in the videos. We had a lot of that information back in 2018, moving in towards the beginning of the trial in 2019. And the trial started. And as I said earlier, we were passive. We were sitting, waiting for us to attack the situation. And in May 2020, we realised that there was going to be no attack from the defence. And we had, myself and Caroline, my wife Caroline, had a meeting with the solicitors in Newry, our local town. And the solicitor told us quite candidly that day that they were not an investigative solicitor and they were not going to investigate. And we made, it was a ginormous move at that point, halfway through the trial, to change solicitors. and the barrister, the whole legal team was against it. But myself and Caroline sat with them in Dublin, and we explained that we weren't happy, and we brought in a new team of solicitors, whom we're much happier with now. And but a lot of the case had slipped by. The story, the narrative, the whole picture had been created and presented to the jury, and it would have taken something extraordinary at that time to change the final outcome. I would say at that stage in May, the die had been cast, and there was no drawing back. We hoped there would be, and there was actually one point where we thought, again, Molly Staunton just happened in and around that time.
Mm.
A woman was attacked while giving her evidence. The judge presiding over the case refused to allow an American Homeland agent, Matt Katsky, who was an attaché at the American Embassy in London, approached one of Aaron's friends, who was also named as a suspect, in Belfast Airport, and offered him immunity from everything, offered green cards to his family. And this young man's brother is actually an ongoing case that's going on in Boston at the moment, a very dubious case, offered him that to totally disappear. And Matt Katsky said to this young man, "Just give us Brady and you'll never hear from us again."
So you know, let me ask you this question before we get to Aaron's appeal. And Gemma, you have a hard stop at 2? Do you have a hard stop at 2? Do you have a hard stop at 2 p.m. my time?
Well, look, I can probably keep going for a little, or if you want to continue, because
we could go to let's go to 2:15 my time, which would be 7:15
Okay,
your
perfect.
time. So I have a
Perfect.
question. This diesel laundering, when people are involved with that, do their clothes smell?
Yes.
So was there anybody check to see what Aaron's clothes were like? Like, you know, did anybody ever check to see, well, what was what did he wear the night, the night before, right? Just to verify that he was where he said he was.
A very, very valid point. And again, I'm going to go back to something Gemma mentioned earlier. Gemma went to Aaron's then girlfriend's family. So Aaron was in the yard. He went back to his house, changed, was washed, cleaned, hair gelled, clean clothes, and he was back in his girlfriend's house and acting quite normal and acting as usual. They said his normal giddy self. So he had time to do all that and get back to the house, which he wouldn't have had time to do if we take into context the storyboard created by the DPP and the authorities here in Ireland, because the vehicle was driven 37 kilometres to be burned. Aaron would have had to get back, washed, changed, showered, back to his girlfriend's, which again is physically impossible. So it's a very valid point. He would not have been able to do all that and get back to his girlfriend's in the allotted time that was there as hard factual evidence.
Right, Gemma,
and the idea, Diana, that he would have been safely, like if he had murdered the cop, he would have been safely back over the border, which has a completely different police force. You know, it's the English, it's the Crown runs them, right? So it's called the Police Service of Northern Ireland. The Gardaí, the Irish Gardaí, cannot cross the border. They've no jurisdiction there. So they want us to believe that Aaron, having killed a cop, went back over into the Republic of Ireland. Like he would have been, if he had done it, he was over the border in the UK. He was safe from them. And they're trying to expect us to believe he did go back down. He spent the night with his friend in the south, in the Republic. He knew, like if he had killed Adrian Donaghy, he would have known there would have been Gardaí everywhere. So why would he have come back down over the border?
Right.
It makes absolutely no sense. And another point before Tony comes back in, Aaron travelled on a UK passport. So when the Gardaí went to arrest him, they actually got an Irish passport for him, because people in Northern Ireland, following the Good Friday Agreement, prior to that, they can have dual citizenship, Irish, British. So, but Aaron was traveling on a British passport, and they got a new passport for him, new citizenship basically, and brought him back into the South. Completely illegal in my book. He should have been, there should have been an extradition warrant through the UK police, and they should have decided, well, is the evidence against him sufficient to extradite him back to Northern Ireland, first and foremost, which is a separate jurisdiction. So the criminality and corruption that went on in this case is mind-blowing. That's why I don't believe it's an accident.
Yeah, see, I don't believe it's any of it. Anytime these things happens, especially since Adrian Donahue got called into work, right? I mean, he got called into work that day, that evening, right? And so again, to me, if I were a police officer and I was working that kind of a detail, I think I would take my firearm out of my holster or wherever I kept it if somebody blocked an exit. Right. And they were trying to exit the credit union and they were blocked. And at the same time, 4 people jumped out of the bushes. To me, that's like a very sophisticated operation of what happened.
It was his partner left for Spain shortly afterwards. He headed off to Spain. The cop who was driving the car. And then in the media for the following weeks, it was all about how Irish police should, you see, the Irish police, the Gardaí, are not armed. And they want to arm them, obviously, as part of this New World Order Agenda 2030. It's essential for them that they will be armed. So they made a big deal about this in the media, and the police were saying, now he was armed, but they wanted it. What is it, Tony, that they wanted them to have a higher degree of weaponry?
Well, more or less
this was a sort of a...
Sorry.
No, that's right. What did they want them?
There is a train of thought that they want all police officers armed. Only a small number of detectives in each district, shall we say, are armed in Ireland. And the vast majority of patrolmen, as they're known, I think in the States, are here in Ireland, the vast majority are not armed. They want the everyday police officer in Ireland to be armed. That would be what certain people would be looking for, is to have a fully armed police force.
So do you think they're using this as an example? Is that what you were saying, Gemma, that they were using the murder of
I think so.
Do you think they were using it?
Yeah, it was definitely, they exploited it. When you look back at the coverage, you could see like the police sort of unions came out in the days afterwards, and they were, furious at police management that this could be allowed to happen. And but I think that was a cover, that was a way of distracting the public, that this is about our poor police and that they're not looked after at all. And the wife, the grieving widow, she went into, there was a lot of sort of exploitation of her, but she went along with it. And they sort of set a new narrative around that, that the police aren't being given enough protection, etc., and they do such a dangerous job. But I mean, I'm not in any doubt that robbery was staged, and that it possibly is that the police were working with some of the criminals who carried out the robbery, and there was a quid pro quo going on with cash and drugs. But I think, Tony, if you could explain the Daniel Cahill stuff, because I think for the American viewers that's really relevant about his arrest.
Yes, the American aspect of the case was obviously vital, because the circumstantial evidence here in Ireland was so weak, and for the jury to draw inference from it was a massive leap. So in order to bridge that gap, that leap that the authorities wanted the jury to take. They created this narrative in America and approached a number of people. And I suppose the main witness, he was described in the mainstream media here, and there was a certain amount of hero content published throughout the mainstream media via obviously written and on various podcasts and on social media. So we have a young man called Daniel Cahill who left Dublin under strange circumstances. We do know for a fact that he was stabbed a number of times, and he was involved with a terrorist gang in Dublin, the Real IRA, and he was involved with the Ryan brothers, Alan and Vincent Ryan, who would have been leaders of the Real IRA in Ireland in and around that time.
Is this
He
him right
denied
here?
a lot of this on the road.
Is that him right here?
Yes, that's him with Alan Ryan on the top left.
Okay, this one, that's him right here, and then that's him over here.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, the earrings. And Gemma, I think you sent me a little video. Was he wearing a dress?
Yes. Yes, he's very much caught up in the I'd say he's been very, he's MK Ultra product and very severely damaged young man. Possibly, I don't know, is he involved? That's my feeling about him. I want to say that he now owns this pub. I think he's been given this pub as a reward for the lies that he told about Aaron. It's called the Blind Pig in Westchester. The Blind Pig, appropriately, in Westchester, upstate New York. And if anyone is in that area, I would plead, this pub is where Aaron Brady is being framed from. Westchester, the Blind Pig. And Daniel Cahill has done he does a podcast where they've sort of reinvented him. They've given him a makeover, and he's there with his partner, who's also, I believe, well aware of the situation, but is running from it.
Is this it? Is this the pub?
The Blind Pig in Westchester. Yes, it's a very snazzy cocktail bar.
Oh
yeah.
Yes. It's gorgeous.
This is an illegal. This guy was illegal, right? How did this happen? But he
wow.
The person who is behind this pub has also very serious questions to answer. They're all interconnected. And we've even made a connection with the wife of Adrian Donoghue indirectly, with the person who seems to be behind this particular pub. But they do a podcast, and he, unfortunately for Daniel Cahill, he's getting his lines wrong recently. He spoke about the case recently because he knows that Tony and the family are putting out so much incredible evidence that the game is nearly up for Daniel Cahill. And he's making mistakes when he retells the story. So we managed to clip it and save it in time. But he said that a guy came in and said he was going to shoot a cop, when it was actually, he had told him he had shot a cop. So he's mixing up his lines. And so that podcast was removed, which is very telling. But we had saved it in time. But, if anyone has the courage to, we're not asking for we don't want him to be hurt. But if you know him, if anyone knows anyone who lives in Westchester, maybe to go into that pub and say, look, there's an innocent father of a 5-year-old child in jail tonight because of you. And this has to be sorted out for once and for all.
Mr. Brady, how is Aaron holding up in prison?
Yeah, at the moment, Aaron's very good. He's in exceptionally good shape physically and mentally. He's undertaking a master's degree in sports science and nutrition. He's very active in relation to working with the other prisoners, chess, mindfulness and things like this. He's helping them all with their diet. So, he's very, very positive. He's been very, very strong. There was numerous numerous attempts to break him in prison, particularly early on when he was sent back to Ireland, put into share cells with prisoners who had copious amounts of drugs, cocaine, cannabis, tablets, all sorts of drugs, but he's kept himself in excellent condition, as I say, mentally and physically. Probably just when we are talking about Daniel Cahill, one of the saddest things for Aaron, and he had said at the end of the whole trial and everything, and when he was found guilty, what he was really upset with was that people believed Daniel Cahill and didn't believe him. Because Aaron, in a very, very unusual move, so to speak, or an unusual situation, Aaron gave testimony, which is very, very unusual in a murder case. And because Aaron wanted to tell his story, there's a number of serious issues surrounding Daniel Cahill. We go from to the ridiculous. Daniel Cahill was arrested on the 19th of July 2019, and we are led to believe that the authorities arrived. We do believe Marianne Wade, the Homeland Security officer who did give evidence, refused to give any details of the interactions on the morning of the 19th. But we do believe, we never seen the actual correct paperwork from NYPD that they arrived, but we do know they arrived sometime around 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. The apartment was raided, obviously. Daniel Cahill tells us that he jumped out of his bed naked, jumped into an attic and hid in an attic naked for 6 hours. Now, the reason for this 6 hours delay, it's very important to find the reasons for these extraordinary events. Daniel Cahill is not booked in to 21st Precinct until 1323. So there's a 6 hour gap.
Wow.
Where Daniel Cahill was speaking to the guards from Ireland, as far as I'm concerned. And they told Daniel Cahill, you tell us a story about Aaron Brady, or you're going back to Dublin. And the last time you were in Dublin, Mr. Cahill, someone stuck a knife in your leg. And that was only a warning. He was caught that day with cannabis plants. He was caught with steroids. Another vital piece of information that was withheld from Aaron's defence team. It was let slip by Marianne Wade, the Homeland Security officer. Just very near the end of her testimony, she just mentioned steroids. And Senior Investigating Officer Mark Phillips, the Irish Guard, he forgot to mention it. He said he didn't know.
Informant? Do you think he's an informant? Is that what you think?
Yes, he had to be some sort of an informant or a plant because, again, when you're telling lies, you let little things slip. And during the course of his testimony, Mr. Cahill told us that Homeland Security had called to his apartment previously. Again, we haven't been furnished with the details of it. And this is something we'll hope if we can get make connections and work with people in America, we can actually get these details. Homeland Security called to Daniel Cahill's apartment looking for a gentleman called Dean Evans. Dean Evans was a member of the Real IRA who shot and murdered and admitted to shooting and murdering Peter Butterley in a car park here in County Meath. And Mr. Evans was on the run, and we know now that he was actually hiding in Spain at the time. But Homeland Security went to Daniel Cahill's apartment looking for a terrorist, and obviously they looked in his apartment and they left Mr. Cahill, who was an illegal immigrant, alone. And obviously, because of his association with Dean Evans, who was a terrorist, part of the Real IRA, at that time, Daniel Cahill's feet shouldn't have touched the ground. He should have been on the next flight out of New York. So we have to assume, until we are told different, Daniel Cahill was already an informant prior to his arrest. And like, it really was a circus, Diana, in the court. Agent Wade refused to say that he was arrested, and it was a war of stupid words. Mr. Cahill was detained, and we couldn't find out like you know yourself, Diana, if the people come to a house and they're just looking for this man, he wasn't wanted for anything. There was no particular reason. He wasn't wanted for any crime, as far as we know. And you imagine ERO, an immigration removal officer, NYPD, Homeland Security, detectives, drugs unit. They're not going to stand around an apartment for 6 hours. It never happened. It's a tissue of lies.
You know, it's interesting.
And
Mr. Brady, but you said that Adrian's partner went to Spain after
I said
the
that,
murder.
yeah.
And then you just said this other person was in Spain. I just thought that was interesting. That's all right. I don't know how frequent it is that people from Ireland go to Spain. I don't know. I mean, people from Boston don't go to Spain that often. But before we go, two things. How can people, if you can tell us how we can help? Do you need money? And the other thing is, what's going on with Aaron's appeal?
Okay, Aaron's appeal is due on October the 4th. And we're looking forward to that. There's a lot of work again being done behind the scenes, and that work could be greatly helped. And it's one of the reasons we actually created the campaign, because we are fully aware that people were approached by Homeland Security and the guards, asked to make false statements, and when they refused, they were deported. People were very, very afraid. If you can imagine, Diana, Aaron was persona non gratis in Woodlawns, Yonkers, that whole area, because he was drawing a lot of attention to that area. ICE were all over the place, and they were blaming Aaron Brady, and they were putting pressure on people, and the poor undocumented Irish had to go to ground. And there was a lot of fear, intimidation, coercion, along with the collusion and inducements used to try and get people to make statements. Very recently, again, something Gemma mentioned earlier, Daniel Cahill was involved with a number of young men who attacked another group with machetes and knives. And we've been aware of that for 2 or 3 years, but again, we didn't mention the young people who were attacked. We never mentioned their names because out of our respect for those people. And a young man came forward there, I think 10 days ago, and he actually wrote on one of our videos that he was there that night. And the words he used was Daniel Cahill was a scumbag and he tried to kill our friends with a machete. And Daniel Cahill got a protection order against him over that incident. The reason it didn't go further into court, the people he attacked were illegal and didn't turn up at the full arraignment. But he still got a protection order against him. And we did have an investigator in New York who brought up Daniel Cahill's rap sheet, and it's completely clean. Nothing on it. No steroids, no cannabis, no machete attack, no drug dealing as a bartender. None of those things were on his rap sheet. Completely wiped clean. And they let him walk out 21st precinct, and they told him that they would help him with his paperwork to stabilise his position as a legal immigrant. So on that 19th of July in 2019, Daniel Cahill was still an illegal immigrant. Again, he should have been on the next flight out of New York. When he attacked the people with the machete, he should have been on the next flight out of New York. When Homeland Security called to his apartment looking for Dean Evans, member of the Real IRA and mother of Peter Butterley, Daniel Cahill should have been on the next flight out of New York. He is not a suitable star witness in a murder trial.
Right. No.
And
you know what's interesting, Mr. Brady, is the use of a machete. That's something like Mexican, South American. That's the gangs that use those type of weapons. Very unusual for somebody, in my opinion, an American or somebody from Ireland to use a machete as a weapon. So that to me speaks of drugs, connection with south of the border here in the United States. Something's not right there in terms of that. But we before we go, if you can tell us how we can help, people can go to www.justice justice4aaronbrady.com. But you probably need money. Who's paying for these attorneys? Yes.
Well, Aaron at the moment has legal aid, so
Legal aid, like a state attorney?
a state attorney, yes. But here you're allowed choose your attorney or your solicitor, and the state will pay those.
Can you get a private attorney? Can you get a private attorney?
Oh yes, yeah, we can here in Ireland, and you apply for legal aid through the courts, and more often than not, it is granted. We've been very lucky that way, and but it's really getting people talking about it in America. My main, and I was absolutely delighted when you offered this opportunity to us to just slightly open the door. So it's getting talking to people. I would love to go to America. I was stopped going to America. I was actually going to Las Vegas with some friends of mine. We have a small group who play cards, and I was stopped at Dublin Airport. And when I asked why I was stopped, the officer told me that, and he typed up on the computer, he asked me, he says, "Mr. Brady, have you ever intimidated a witness in an ongoing case?" So again, there's another false narrative created by the guards to stop me going to America. I would love to be able to put my feet on the streets of New York and Boston, go and talk to people that may be able to find the information that we cannot get. The correct way to, if there's someone could help us and point us in the right direction for freedom of information in respect of, like, I think you may have seen, Diana, that other American gentleman, Matt, they threatened him with 25 years in prison for helping a known terrorist. They said that Aaron was, there's a gentleman Aaron would have worked with in Boston when he went to Boston initially. And he told us quite clearly, we have him videoed, telling someone that he says the cops wrote my statement and I just said it. I was caught with cocaine. I was caught with prescription drugs. I was going down for a long time. And here he was walking on the streets in Boston outside Chicken Filet or some of those places. So we really have to unravel this as somehow in Boston and New York. The behaviour of Homeland Security agent Matt Katsky is horrific. But on another hand, we have to understand what the guards in Ireland, the police in Ireland, told Matt Katsky and Homeland Security. I'm assuming the Gardaí went to Ireland and said, "We know Aaron Brady shot Detective Guard Adrian Donoghue and we need help to entrap him." And that's exactly the procedure that was taken then, because it's only criminals and people with immigration issues who actually gave statements. And there are two or three other people. And when you see the detail of it, Diana, what happened, it's just very hard to believe it would happen in a normal, whatever normal is, in a normal society. And we have to, I would dearly love, and we would dearly love the Homeland Security and those officers to understand they were duped. And they were told the tissue of lies by Garda Síochána, and the work they'd done in America, albeit illegal, was created by a false narrative they were given. So if there's anyone out there,
Yeah, Mr. Brady, so if you want to come to Boston, I'll pick you up at Logan Airport, okay? That's number one. Number two, I can help you with some information about how to do the Freedom of Information request. But I can tell you, when you try to get it from the police, it's very, very difficult, okay? But what you're doing is very difficult, and you're doing it. Somebody made a comment that you should come into America through Mexico. So you can change your name there. You can change your name and come on, right? But if you can get to Boston, I can pick you up in Logan Airport. I'm a Bostonian. What were you going to say?
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have cut across it. I would suggest, Diana, I would not be in Boston 1 hour before I would be arrested.
That's all right. I will help you. And you probably don't know that I have some connections to some criminal attorneys here in Massachusetts, so we could help you. So don't worry about being arrested. You just keep your mouth shut. You don't say anything, right? You say
Yes.
nothing, zero. You don't even tell them your name, right? You keep your mouth shut, and we will get you an attorney. And the way I look at it here, and I talk to people all the time. I know it's difficult, excuse me, money wise when you have to pay for a private attorney, but when you get an attorney through the court, they all play on the same team. They're
Well,
all playing on the same team. They're all getting paid from the same bucket,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So,
It-
so thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're busy and you're working hard. Mr. Brady, anytime you want to do another live stream, you just let me know. And if there's something specific you want to talk about, I still have many burning questions. And
Yeah.
there's so much, I'm not even circumstantial. Like there's no circumstantial evidence. There's nothing that proves that Aaron Brady committed this horrific murder. There's nothing that proves that from everything that I've read. So Gemma, thank you so much for the introduction. And where can people find you, Gemma?
Well, on my website, gemmaodoherty.com, or if they want to contact me, irishlightpaper.com. Just two other things, if you don't mind, Diana, and I want to really thank you, because this family and Aaron have had so many doors slammed in their faces over the last few years. And it disgusts me that Irish people, there but for the grace of God go any of us, that they could take one of our children and unlawfully incarcerate them. So this family needs support. So I really want to applaud you for that. I think one of the things that's important to say, in the court, the judge was so corrupt. When Aaron's lawyers tried to highlight Daniel Cahill's criminal connections and that he was involved with terrorist organizations, the judge shut him down. He was not allowed, the lawyer was not allowed to question Daniel Cahill in front of the jury properly, because if he had been allowed to, Daniel Cahill's lies would have been exposed. But the judge kept protecting Daniel Cahill. The other point I want to make is just again that I would ask, because Tony has been so severely harassed by the police in Ireland. If Tony's trying to get justice for his only son who is now a father himself. So he's trying to reunite his grandson with his son, which is the most important job that any father can do. And the lengths they have gone to try and silence Tony, they have arrested Tony, and they accuse Tony, who is, as you can see, a gentleman to the core, of harassing and intimidating witnesses, the same people who are telling lies about his son. And all in the meantime, the real killers are on the loose. The real killers of Adrian Donahue are on the loose. So they know they have an innocent man. So it's not easy for Tony to just hop on a plane over to the States, because he will be arrested there.
Yep.
He'll be arrested if he even makes contact with any of these people. He would be arrested. That's how frightened they are. That's a sign of guilt on their part. So what I would say again to people, the blind pig in Westchester. Now, Tony is not saying that. I'm saying it. I'd love the police to come and arrest me over this case, because it would put it to the top of the news agenda in Ireland. I want them to arrest me. Daniel Cahill, the blind pig, Westchester. He is the person who has framed Aaron Brady. And I'm asking any of your listeners to please, do what you can do for Tony Brady and for Aaron. And the other person is Molly Staunton. Where does she live now, Tony? In upstate New York, is it?
Yeah, I think she's still living in the Woodlawn area, as far as I know. And again, we've always been concerned for her well-being, because as you know, Gemma, we could have said different things about her well-being mentally and physically, but it's something we've never entered into. But we are coming to a tipping point where we are going to have to be more cutting with what we're saying, and we have more information behind the scene, as Gemma knows, and some of it again is hearsay. But we know it's good information. But we have been, even to the likes of Daniel Cahill and to Molly, we have tried to keep it at a level where these people might have some sort of realization. I'm sorry, I was forced into telling lies, and this is what really happened. So, and
that's what we would hope, that they would find their conscience if they have one, and to all they have to say is that they were coerced, they were promised things by the police, they told lies, and they want Aaron to be free. That's all we're asking them. And they will be protected because the public will then know, so they won't be touched. If Daniel Cahill could please come forward and say that he knows Aaron did not shoot any cop at any time. Aaron is living a very difficult life. He's an incredibly strong young man, but the conditions in the prison are pretty awful. He gets very, very little time outdoors. They've treated him despicably. They had him in isolation to try and break him, and he's making the most of it. He's helping so many other prisoners. He's an incredible young man, but he needs to be reunited with his family and his son in particular.
Yep.
So thank you, Diana.
Yeah, no, thank you both. And Gemma, you come to Boston. Gemma can come to Boston.
I'd be arrested too. I'd definitely be arrested.
You an attorney too. That's all right. I'll live stream. That's all right. So God bless you, and keep me posted, Mr. Brady. Let me know if there's anything further that we can do to help.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana. Thank you so much for the time. I'm sorry for my technical errors at the beginning.
No, don't apologize. You're too nice. You're too nice. We're not. Listen, I'm not nice, Mr. Brady. So don't you worry about it. Don't you worry.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
No.
And thank you so much for the opportunity. And it might be just the little opening in Boston and New York, because the House of Cards were very, very close to knocking the House of Cards. That is the false conviction of our son. So thank you again, Diana. Thank you for the time. And no doubt we'll speak again in the near future. Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you. And thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. God bless.
Good night, honey. Good night. And I just want to remind everybody, stay tuned at 3:00. I'm going to put the boxing gloves on, and Mike King is going to join me. And we're going to discuss President Donald J. Trump. Is he a traitor? Is he going to save America? Is Q all it's racked up to be? So join me at 3:00, and we're going to do a quick change, and we will be back. See you soon. Bye-bye.